He was the most powerful man in England, a duke who lived by logic, not passion. She was a woman with a secret, running for her life. She came to him with an old debt and a desperate plea: 30 days of protection. The Duke of Radcliffe agreed to the terms, seeing it as a simple, finite transaction. He would secure her for 1 month, then wash his hands of the affair. But as the days bled into weeks, the man who prided himself on control realized that his carefully constructed world was about to be shattered, and that 30 days would never be enough. The rain against the carriage window was a merciless drumbeat, echoing the panic in Seraphina Talbot's heart. She was a ghost, fleeing one prison for the uncertain mercy of another. Her escape from her guardian's London townhouse had been a blur of stolen moments: a bribed stable boy, a midnight race through fog-shrouded streets, and the last of her mother's jewels funding this desperate flight. Her guardian, Barnaby Crouch, was not just a guardian. He was a monster. Since her father's death, Crouch's oily demeanor had curdled from false solicitude into something possessive and terrifying. He controlled her inheritance, her movements, and he had made his intentions clear. She would be his wife by force if necessary, uniting her fortune with his ambition. Her refusal had been met with a locked door and the cold, terrifying promise that he would break her of this foolish defiance. She had one single, desperate hope: a name from her father's past. Radcliffe. Alistair Vane, the Duke of Radcliffe, was a man of immense power and chilling reputation. He was unmarried, fabulously wealthy, and lived in self-imposed exile at his ancestral seat, Hertford Abbey. He was known as the Iron Duke, not for military prowess, but for his cold, unbending logic. He detested scandal, mess, and emotion. He was, in short, the last man in England who would welcome a hysterical woman on his doorstep. But Seraphina's father, Arthur Talbot, had once done the Vane family an incalculable service. Long before Alistair inherited the title, his father had faced ruin. Arthur Talbot, a merchant with a sharp mind and a quiet sense of honor, had intervened, saving the family's name and fortune. A debt had been incurred. A letter, kept in her father's desk, was Seraphina's only proof. Her courage rattled to a stop at the imposing gates of Hertford. Even in the downpour, the estate was breathtaking and severe. Stone, iron, and ancient yews. She was refused entry, of course, a drenched, frantic woman with no invitation. "I must see him," she insisted to the butler, a man who looked as though he'd been carved from the same granite as the house. "Give him this." She pressed the worn, leather-bound letter into the butler's hand. "It is from my father, Arthur Talbot. Tell him I am cashing in the debt." She waited in the rain for an agonizing 20 minutes, shivering, certain she would be turned away. Then the great oak doors opened. She was led not to a drawing room, but to a vast, shadowed library. Books lined every wall, and a fire roared in the hearth, offering no warmth against the room's chilling occupant. Alistair Vane, the Duke of Radcliffe, stood by the window, staring out at the storm. He was tall, dressed in impeccably tailored, stark black. He did not turn when she entered. "Miss Talbot," his voice was a low, precise baritone, "you have placed me in an untenable position." "Your Grace," Seraphina's voice trembled, but she refused to weep. "I would not be here if I had any other choice. My guardian, Mr. Crouch." "I am aware of Mr. Crouch," Alistair cut in, finally turning. His face was striking, all harsh angles and intelligent, unnervingly grey eyes. "He is a man of rising influence in the city. To harbour you is to invite a scandal I have no interest in." "He means to ruin me, to force my hand in marriage," she said, her hands clenching. He is a vile man. My father saved your family. The letter is genuine, Alistair said, tapping it against his palm. My father was emotional. He spoke of a life debt. I do not deal in such abstract currency. However, the honor of my house is not abstract. He walked to his desk. You ask for protection. Yes, just until I can find a way. Until I can access my own funds or find allies. I will not be drawn into a protracted legal battle, Miss Talbot. I will not involve myself in a war with Barnaby Crouch. He looked at her, his gaze analytical, devoid of pity. But a debt is owed. I will pay it. In full. And then the matter will be concluded. He dipped a quill in ink. You require sanctuary. I will give it to you. My household will protect you. You will remain here, at Heartwood, as my distant relation. A story will be fabricated. In return, you will not speak of your circumstances. You will not contact anyone, and you will not, under any circumstances, cause a scene. Seraphina nodded, relief so potent it made her dizzy. Thank you, Your Grace. I will be no trouble. I am counting on it, he said, the ink scratching on the paper. My man of business will inform Mr. Crouch that you are under my protection. That alone should be enough to stay his hand. For now. He finished writing and sanded the page. The terms are this. I will offer you the full and complete protection of my name and my household for a period of 1 month. Seraph uncertainty chilled her. 1 month? 31 days, to be precise. We are at the end of May. You will be safe here until the 1st of July. By that time, you must have made other arrangements. The debt will be paid. Is that clear? It was a business transaction, a cold, calculated settling of accounts. She was not a person to him. She was a debit on his family's ledger. Yes, Your Grace, she whispered, because it had to be enough. That is more than clear. Good. Mrs. Beckett, my housekeeper, will show you to your rooms. You will dine alone this evening. I have work to attend to. He turned back to the window, a clear dismissal. Seraphina Talbot had found her sanctuary, but as the library door clicked shut behind her, she realized she had merely traded one cage for another, this one colder, larger, and ruled by a man made of iron. Heartwood Abbey was a world unto itself. It was magnificent, ancient, and utterly devoid of comfort. The stone corridors were draughty, the tapestries were dark with age, and the staff, led by the formidable Mrs. Beckett, moved with silent, unnerving efficiency. They were polite, but distant. They were the Duke's people, and Seraphina was an anomaly, an unwelcome disruption to their perfect, rigid order. Her first week was one of profound isolation. True to his word, the Duke was an invisible presence. She heard his movements occasionally, the crunch of his boots on the gravel path at dawn, the distant, muffled sound of his voice from his study. But she never saw him. She ate her meals alone in a small, cold breakfast parlour. Her days were spent in the library, a room he clearly avoided while she was in it, or walking the formal gardens, always under the watchful eye of a footman, ostensibly for her protection. She felt like a ghost, haunting the edges of his life. But it was, she admitted, a safe haunting. She didn't jump at every shadow. She didn't lie awake listening for Barnaby Crouch's heavy footfall in the hall. She began to breathe again. Alistair Vane, meanwhile, was intensely irritated. The girl was a problem. She was quiet, yes. She caused no scenes, but her presence was a disruption. He could feel it. He found himself altering his own sacred routines. He took his morning coffee in his study, rather than the breakfast parlour she now occupied. He found himself delaying his evening work in the library until he was sure she had retired. It was inefficient. It was annoying. He had his man of business, Mr. Davies, deliver a curt, legally precise letter to Barnaby Crouch. It stated only that Miss Talbot was visiting the Duke of Radcliffe's estate and would be unavailable for correspondence for the immediate future. The implication was clear. She is mine to protect. Do not cross me. Crouch, as Alistair anticipated, didn't reply. The man was a coward at his core, bold only when bullying a defenseless woman. He would not dare challenge a duke. The matter should have been settled. Alistair could now simply ignore Miss Talbot for the remaining 3 weeks and be done with it. But then, on a rainy afternoon in her second week, he broke his own rule. He entered the library, assuming it to be empty, and found her curled on the window seat, a heavy volume of poetry in her lap. She startled, her eyes wide, scrambling to her feet and dropping the book with a heavy thud. "Your Grace, my apologies, I will leave." "Stay," he said, the command sharper than he intended. He retrieved the book, the lyrical ballads. Wordsworth, an emotional choice. "I find it hopeful," she said quietly, her gaze on the floor. "Hope is a dangerous indulgence. It clouds logic." He moved to the shelves, intending to retrieve a ledger. "And logic," she countered, her voice gaining a slyer length, "can be a fortress to hide behind. Is there no room for both?" He paused. He was not used to being challenged, especially not by a woman he was sheltering. He turned to look at her properly for the first time. She was not a cowering mouse. She was pale, yes, and too thin, but her eyes, a deep, clear hazel, held an intelligent fire. "A fortress," he mused, "is a place of safety. Logic is my safety, Miss Talbot. Emotion is the enemy of order. Is that what you believe, or is it what you've been taught?" Before he could formulate a response, she curtsied. "Forgive my impertinence. I will not trouble you further." She fled the room. Alistair stood frozen, the ledger forgotten in his hand. He had expected tears, gratitude, or fear. He had not expected debate. That night, a package arrived from London. It was not for him. It was addressed to Miss Seraphina Talbot, Hartwood Abbey. His staff, under strict orders, brought it to him immediately. "It was delivered by a private courier, Your Grace," the butler said. He was insistent. Alistair looked at the small, neatly wrapped box. It bore no return address. He knew, with a sudden, cold certainty, that it was from Crouch. He had bypassed the Duke's defences. Alistair's first instinct was to burn it. It was a breach of his security, but it was addressed to her. He sent for her. She arrived, looking pale and worried. "You wish to see me?" He indicated the box on his desk. "This arrived." Seraphina's face went white. She recoiled as if it were a snake. "From him." "It would seem Mr. Crouch is not as easily deterred as I had hoped," Alistair said, his voice clipped. "He is testing my resolve. You must burn it. Please, I don't want to know what's in it." "He will only send another. He needs to know his message, whatever it is, has been received and has failed." He took a silver letter opener from his desk. "Open it. Here, in front of me." Her hands were shaking so violently she couldn't break the seal. With a sigh of exasperation, Alistair took the box and sliced the twine. Inside, on a bed of black velvet, was a single, perfect white camellia, already beginning to brown at the edges. Tucked beneath it was a small, folded note. Seraphina let out a small, strangled cry. "What is it?" Alistair demanded. "She wouldn't touch it." It was my mother's favourite flower. He knows. He's telling me. He's telling me I can't escape." She was trembling, but it was the note that made her physically sick. She unfolded it and her blood ran cold. Alistair snatched it from her fingers as she swayed. It wasn't a threat of violence. It was worse. It was a detailed, flowery, and utterly damning love letter, purportedly written by her to him. It spoke of their secret meetings, of her supposed affection for him, of her desire to flee the constraints of society and be with him. It was dated a month prior to her arrival at Heartwood. It was a forgery, a brilliant, damning forgery. "He has more," she whispered, her voice hollow. "He told me he had a box of them. He said if I ever defied him, he would release them. He would prove I was a wanton, ruined woman who had thrown herself at him. No one would believe me. He is my guardian. You would be seen as the man harboring his cast-off mistress." Alistair stared at the note, his grey eyes turning to chips of ice. This was not a simple matter of bullying. This was a calculated, vicious attack on two fronts, her reputation and his. Barnaby Crouch hadn't just tested the Duke's defences. He had declared war, and in doing so, he had made a fatal error. He had angered the Iron Duke. The atmosphere at Heartwood Abbey changed overnight. The shift was subtle, but total. The Duke, who had been a ghost, was now a presence. He did not confine Seraphina to her rooms. Instead, he did the opposite. He instructed Mrs. Beckett that Miss Talbot would henceforth dine with him every night. Their first dinner was a stiff, agonizing affair. Seraphina was still terrified from the message, and Alistair was consumed by a cold, calculating fury he had not felt in years. He despised complications, and Barnaby Crouch had just become the most significant complication of his life. "You will tell me everything," he said, not as a request, but as a command, once the servants had cleared the plates. "Every detail you know about Crouch's affairs, his habits, his associates, his weaknesses." I know very little," Seraphina stammered. "He kept me isolated. He manages my father's entire estate. He likes to gamble, I think. He spoke often of his friends at the clubs. Which clubs? He never said. He was always secretive. But he was obsessed with reputation, with appearing to be a man of great standing. He wishes to appear as a man of standing," Alistair mused, steepling his fingers. "Which means, most likely, he is not. He is using your father's money to build a facade." This was a new thought. Alistair had assumed Crouch was simply a predator. But if he was financially unstable, he was vulnerable. "He is not just after you, Miss Talbot. He is after the Talbot fortune. You are simply the vessel he must possess to secure it." This cold, logical assessment should have been insulting. Instead, it was the first truly comforting thing anyone had said to her. Alistair wasn't treating her as a hysterical female. He was treating her as a fellow strategist in a siege. "What do we do?" she asked. "We? I will do what is necessary. You will remain here, and you will, for the first time in your life, feel safe." He was wrong about that. She didn't feel safe. She felt something far more dangerous, a peculiar, fluttering hope. The remaining 2.5 weeks of the 1-month agreement transformed. Alistair no longer avoided her. He seemed to have decided that since she was his problem, he would keep his eye on her. He found her in the library, and instead of leaving, he pulled a book from the shelf and sat across from her, reading in silence. He insisted she join him for his morning walk in the gardens, a brisk, silent march that she struggled to keep up with. And they began to talk. It started with books. He was a man of science and philosophy. She was a woman of poetry and art. He called her a romantic. She called him a cynic. "You see the world as a machine, Your Grace," she argued one evening over chess. "All cogs and levers. And you see it as a painting, Miss Talbot, all colour and emotion, signifying nothing. He captured her bishop. A machine can be controlled. A painting is chaotic or beautiful, she countered, moving her knight. You fear chaos? He looked up, his hand hovering over his rook. I do not fear it. I dislike it. It is unpredictable. It leads to ruin. It also leads to this, she gestured vaguely, to kindness. You took me in. That was not a logical act. It was an emotional one, driven by your father's honor. It was the settling of a debt, he said stiffly. Check. She looked at the board. He had her trapped. So it was, she said softly. He began to see her. Really see her. He saw the quickness of her mind, a mind that had been starved of education, but was instinctively brilliant. He saw the resilience that bent but never broke. He saw the quiet way she spoke to the servants, thanking them by name, something he, shamefully, rarely did. He also found himself changing. He instructed Mrs. Beckett to light fires in the drawing room. He had the cook prepare a lemon cake he'd overheard Seraphina mention she liked. These were small, illogical, inefficient actions. They terrified him. Mr. Davies, his man of business, arrived from London with a full report. It is as you suspected, Your Grace, Davies said. All business. Barnaby Crouch is a house of cards. He's been living high on the Talbot assets, but his gambling is prolific. He owes a substantial sum to a Mr. Henderson, who runs the Griffin in St. James's, a very private, very illegal establishment, and he has been seen at Tattersall's betting ring, losing heavily. He is desperate, Alistair said. Precisely, and a desperate man is a dangerous one. He must secure Miss Talbot's hand in marriage before her majority, or he will be forced to give an accounting of the estate. The forgeries are his insurance. If she will not be his wife, he will make her a pariah, and he will continue to bleed the estate dry in her absence. The letters, Alistair said. They are the key. We must prove they are forgeries. That will be difficult, Your Grace. It is his word, as her guardian, against hers. Alistair looked out the window. The gardens were in full bloom. The 1-month agreement had only 4 days left. 4 days. The thought landed in his chest like a physical blow. 4 days, and he would have to send her away. The debt would be paid. He had promised her safety for a month, but he hadn't yet solved her problem. And the thought of her leaving Heartwood. It was illogical. It was chaos. It was unbearable. Your Grace, Davies prompted, noticing the Duke's long silence. Alistair turned, his face set in stone. The plan has changed, Davies. We are no longer defending. We are attacking. Crouch wants to ruin Miss Talbot's reputation. Very well. We will give him the public stage he so desperately craves. Sir, we are going to London, all of us, and we are going to attend the Duchess of Gordon's ball. This was more than a change of plan. It was madness. The Duke of Radcliffe, the most notorious recluse in England, was going to the most public event of the season, and he was bringing the woman at the centre of the storm with him. The journey to London was a blur. Seraphina was thrust into a maelstrom of activity. Alistair, now operating with the terrifying precision of a field general, had summoned a modiste from the village. Seraphina was measured, pinned, and fitted for a wardrobe suitable for a duke's distant cousin. You cannot appear as a refugee, Alistair stated, reviewing the fabric swatches with a critical eye. You will appear as a guest. My guest. Your clothing must reflect your station. And mine. She was terrified. Go to London, to a ball. Your Grace, that is what he wants. He will be there. He will confront me. He will show the letters. Yes, Alistair said, his voice calm. He will. She stared at him, uncomprehending. But you said we must avoid scandal. Crouch believes he is in control. He thinks I am hiding you. He thinks I am afraid of him. When he sees us, he will be overcome by his own arrogance. He will act rashly. And when he does— Alistair's thin smile was genuinely frightening. Mr. Davies and I will be waiting. Radcliffe House in St. James's Square was even more imposing than Hartwood, but it was alive with a new energy. Alistair, it turned out, was not just a recluse. He was a power. Messengers came and went. Davies was a permanent fixture in the study. Seraphina felt the hum of a great machine turning its gears. The night of the Duchess of Gordon's ball arrived. It was the 29th of June, 2 days before her month of protection was set to expire. Seraphina stood before the mirror in her new chambers. The gown was magnificent, a deep, shimmering sapphire silk that brought out the fire in her hazel eyes. Her hair had been styled by a French maid. She looked like a lady. She looked like someone who belonged. Alistair was waiting at the foot of the stairs. He was in formal evening attire, the stark black and white emphasizing his height and the aristocratic severity of his features. When he saw her, he froze. He didn't just see a woman in a fine dress. He saw the woman who argued with him about poetry, the woman who had faced ruin with a courage he'd never witnessed, the woman who had, in 30 short days, dismantled every wall he had ever built. "Miss Talbot," he said, his voice hoarse. He cleared his throat. "You look acceptable." She smiled, a small, genuine smile. "And you, Your Grace, look almost sociable." He did not return the smile, but he offered his arm. "Let us go to war." The ballroom at Devonshire House was a galaxy of glittering diamonds and societal sharks. The moment the Duke of Radcliffe entered, a shocked hush fell over the room. He had not been seen in London society in 5 years, and he was not alone. "Who is she?" The whisper followed them. Alistair navigated the room with an ease that belied his reclusive nature. He was, she realized, a lion who had simply chosen not to hunt. But he was still a lion. He greeted the Duchess. He nodded to other peers. He introduced Seraphina simply as Miss Talbot, my guest. His possession of her was total. And then she saw him. Barnaby Crouch was standing near the card-room, his face a mask of puce-coloured rage. His waistcoat was too bright, his smile too wide. He was precisely as she remembered, a man puffing himself up to fill a room. When he saw her on Alistair's arm, his smile vanished. He began to move toward them. "He's coming," Seraphina whispered, her hand tightening on Alistair's arm. "Do not look at him," Alistair commanded. "Look at me." She forced her gaze up to his. His grey eyes were intense, focused only on her. "He has no power here. He is a bug. I am a duke. You are with me. Do not forget it. Radcliffe, what a surprise." Crouch's voice was oily, booming. Alistair turned slowly. "Crouch, I was not aware you were on the Duchess's list." The insult was subtle and brutal. Crouch's face twitched. "Seraphina, my dear, you have caused me such worry. Fleeing your home, it is a relief to see you have landed in such powerful hands." "Miss Talbot is under my protection," Alistair said, his voice dropping to a dangerous chill. "And you, sir, are no longer her guardian." The statement was a cannon shot in the quiet corner of the ballroom. "I beg your pardon," Crouch sputtered. "I am her legal guardian, appointed by her father, a position you have abused," Alistair said. "A position you are, as of this morning, no longer entitled to. Mr. Davies has been busy. The Lord Chancellor reviewed my petition. Given your mismanagement of the Talbot estate, your guardianship has been provisionally revoked. I am, by the court's decree, her new protector. Serafina's knees went weak. She gripped his arm to stay upright. Crouch was stunned. This was not in his plan. You cannot. This is an outrage. She is compromised. She is a fallen woman. He was losing control. This was what Alistair wanted. She wrote me letters, Crouch shouted, his voice rising, drawing attention. Letters begging me to take her. She is a wanton. I have proof. He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a packet of letters tied with a black ribbon. The same stationery, the same handwriting. This man, Crouch sneered, has taken my intended, a ruined woman, into his home. The silence was absolute. Everyone was staring. Serafina felt the blood drain from her face. You are correct about one thing, Crouch, Alistair said, his voice slicing through the tension. You do have letters, but you seem to have misunderstood their purpose. He signaled over Crouch's shoulder. Two men, large and impeccably dressed, stepped forward. Serafina recognized one, Mr. Henderson, the owner of the Griffin. Mr. Crouch, Henderson said, his voice pleasant. We were so disappointed. You missed our meeting this afternoon. You have some outstanding markers. And a significant debt at Tattersall's, said the other man, a notorious bookie. Crouch turned grey. This is not the place. On the contrary, Alistair said, it is the perfect place. You see, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Crouch is a man of fictions. He is so skilled, in fact, he has been practicing his hand. Alistair looked at the letters in Crouch's hand. Do you know, Mr. Crouch, that the ink on those letters, which you claim are months old, is, in fact, less than a fortnight old? My expert found the chemical composition fascinating. A new blend, not yet widely available. Crouch looked at the letters as if they were poison. You are a forger, Alistair stated. You are an embezzler who has stolen from his ward's estate to pay his gambling debts. And you are, as of this moment, a ruined man. Henderson and the bookie took Crouch firmly by the arms. I will not, Crouch blustered. You will, Henderson said. You will come with us. Quietly. Or we will discuss your other debts, the ones that are not paid with money. They dragged a sputtering, defeated Barnaby Crouch from the ballroom. The room was silent. Alistair Vane turned to the stunned onlookers. My apologies for the theatricals. It seems a piece of refuse was left in the ballroom. Please continue. He looked down at Serafina. She was shaking from head to toe. It is done, he said softly. The letters, she whispered. Were a gamble, he admitted. I didn't know if the ink was new, but I knew he was a gambler, and I knew he was arrogant enough to believe his own lies. He was always going to overplay his hand. The orchestra, at a frantic signal from the Duchess, struck up a waltz. Your Grace, Serafina said, tears welling. You saved me. I settled a debt, he said, the old, stiff words sounding hollow, even to him. Alistair, she said, her voice small. He looked at her. The month is almost over, she whispered, her heart breaking. Tomorrow is the 1st of July. The man who lived by logic, who prided himself on control, looked at the woman who had brought chaos and colour into his grey world. He saw the terror in her eyes, not of Crouch, but of him sending her away. Dance with me, he said, a raw command. What? Dance with me, Serafina. He did not wait for an answer. He swept her onto the floor, pulling her into his arms. It was a scandal. A duke waltzing with an unknown, unmarried woman. But as he held her, Alistair Vane, the Iron Duke, knew with absolute, terrifying certainty that he was the one who had been trapped, The prison of his own logic had been breached, and the man who promised to protect her for 1 month was lost. The dawn of July 1st broke over London, painting the sky in pale shades of rose and grey. It was the day of Seraphina's liberation. Barnaby Crouch was finished. He had been quietly, efficiently ruined. Faced with debtor's prison and charges of fraud, he had, as Mr. Davies reported, accepted the wisdom of a long sea voyage, and was currently on a ship bound for the Americas, one that he would likely never return from. Seraphina was free. Her estate was being placed in the hands of a new, reliable trustee, Mr. Davies, under the Duke's supervision, until she came of age. She was safe. She was wealthy. She was in Radcliffe House, and she had never been more miserable in her life. Today was the day the debt was paid. The 31 days were over. She had packed her small bag, the one she'd arrived with at Hartwood. Her new, beautiful gowns she had left in the wardrobe. They belonged to the Duke, a costume for the part she had played. She sat on the edge of the bed in her simple travelling dress, waiting. She did not know the protocol for this. Did she simply leave? Did she wait for the Duke to formally dismiss her? A knock came at the door. It was Mrs. Beckett, who had travelled with them from Hartwood. The housekeeper's face, usually so severe, was softened with something Seraphina couldn't name. "Miss Talbot, the Duke requests your presence in his study." This was it, the final accounting. She walked the long hall, her feet heavy. She remembered the terror she'd felt entering his library at Hartwood. This was a different terror, a hollow, aching dread. Alistair was standing by the window, just as he had been that first day, staring out at the city. But this time he was not staring at anything. He was lost in thought. "Your Grace," she said, her voice barely a whisper. He turned. He looked undone. His cravat was slightly crooked. His hair, usually so perfect, was mussed, as if he'd been running his hands through it. "Seraphina," he said, using her name. "Please, sit." She remained standing. "It is the 1st of July. I came to thank you. You have done more than my father could ever have asked. You saved my life, my reputation, and my future. I am in your debt." "No," he said, the word sharp. "Do not say that. The debt is paid. The ledger is clear." "Then I will take my leave. I have imposed on you for long enough." "Imposed," he repeated, the word tasting like ash. "Yes, you have. You have imposed on my routines, on my house, on my entire life." He walked toward her, and for the first time, she saw not the Iron Duke, but a man in turmoil. "When you arrived at Hartwood," he said, his voice low, "I saw you as a problem to be solved. A month. A simple, finite period of time. I would contain the chaos, and then I would return to my order." He stopped, standing so close she could see the flecks of silver in his grey eyes. "But you are not a problem, Seraphina. You are chaos. You are poetry in my world of prose. You are colour in my monochrome existence. You argued with me. You challenged me. You made me feel—" "Alistair," she breathed, her heart hammering. "I am a man of logic," he said, almost desperately. "And there is no logic to this. It makes no sense. It is inefficient. It is dangerous. And I do not care." He reached out, his hand shaking slightly, and brushed a stray curl from her cheek. His touch was electric. "I spent my entire life building walls, Seraphina. A fortress, as you called it. And you walked right through the gates, as if they weren't even there. I have been a fool, the greatest, most profound fool." "You are not a fool," she whispered, tears blurring her vision. "I am. Because I told you, 1 month. I, who pride myself on precision, made the single greatest miscalculation of my life. He took her hands. They were cold. 1 month, he repeated. Then I realized I was angry at Crouch. I realized I needed to protect you. Then I realized, at the ball, when I saw you in that blue dress, that I didn't just want to protect you. I wanted... He struggled with the words. The man who could ruin another with a single sentence could not form this one. Forever, he finally choked out. Forever wasn't long enough. Serafina's tears spilled over. Alistair, I thought... You thought I would send you away. And the logical part of me, the part that is screaming in terror right now, says I should. You are young. You are free. You should see the world. You should not be shackled to a cold, difficult recluse who is a decade your senior. Is that what you are? She asked, a watery smile playing on her lips. Or are you the man who instructs his cook to make lemon cake? The man who brings a terrified woman to a ball and declares war on her behalf? He stared at her, stunned. You knew about the cake? You are not as cold as you pretend, Your Grace. Alistair, he corrected her, his grip tightening. My name is Alistair. He took a deep, shuddering breath. The Duke of Radcliffe, the man of iron, went to one knee. Serafina gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Serafina Talbot, you have ruined my peace. You have destroyed my order. You have made my life illogical, chaotic, and unbearable. Without you, I am not offering you protection. I am begging you. Stay. Stay and argue with me. Stay and fill my house with poetry. Be my wife, please. Be my Duchess. She was weeping openly now. Tears of joy, of relief, of a love so profound it hurt. Yes, she cried. Oh yes, yes, Alice after all. Forever isn't long enough. He rose, and in a move that shattered every rule he had ever lived by, he pulled her against him and kissed her. It was not a logical, passionless kiss. It was a kiss of desperation, of hunger, of a debt finally, truly, paid. The engagement of Alistair Vane, the Duke of Radcliffe, to a virtual unknown, Miss Serafina Talbot, exploded in London society like a bomb. It was, in a word, a scandal. But it was a scandal of a different kind. This was not the sordid affair Crouch had tried to create. This was a romance, and society was divided. The romantics, primarily the young ladies of the ton, were enchanted. The reclusive, cold Iron Duke, struck down by a thunderbolt of love for a mysterious, beautiful commoner. It was the stuff of penny dreadfuls. The cynics, however, the dowagers with eligible daughters, the society guardians who had long given up on Radcliffe, were furious. Who was this Miss Talbot? She had no family, no connections. She had been rusticated at his estate for a month, and now, a wedding? It was indecent. Serafina, who had faced down a true monster, now found herself facing a new, more subtle enemy, the whispers in the drawing rooms of Mayfair. She is pretty, I suppose, one countess remarked at a tea, loud enough for Serafina to hear. But no breeding. The Radcliffe line is ancient. It is a shame. They say she was his ward's daughter, another whispered. Or perhaps his, well, you know, he had to marry her. Alistair, to Serafina's surprise, did not retreat to Heartwood. He did the opposite. He plunged them both into the heart of the ton. He accepted invitations. He hosted a dinner. He took her to the opera. He presented Serafina to his few true friends, grizzled old politicians and sharp-witted academics who looked at her, saw the intelligence in her eyes and the genuine love in his, and nodded their approval. But the social battlefield was grueling. It does not matter, Alistair told her one night, as his new valet, a man named Thomas, helped him with his coat. Their opinions are air, They mean nothing." "They mean nothing to you," Serafina countered, adjusting the pearls at her throat, a gift from him, from the vain vaults. "You are a duke. They mean everything to me. They are questioning your judgment. They are saying I trapped you, that I am an adventuress." Alistair stopped, turning to face her. He dismissed Thomas with a nod. "Do you think you trapped me?" he asked, his voice quiet. "No, but I was desperate. I came to you. You came to me with an honest debt," he said, taking her hands. "I am the one who trapped you. I was the one who was desperate. I saw a life of colour, and I seized it. But they don't see that. They see a poor, unknown girl and a very, very rich duke. Then let them see this." He walked her out of their townhouse, not to the carriage, but onto the street. It was a warm July evening, and St. James's Square was quiet. He simply walked with her, on his arm. No chaperone, no footman, just the two of them. It was a small, public, and intimate act. He was showing the world. She is not my ward. She is not my burden. She is my partner. She is my equal. He stopped at the center of the square's garden. "I have not been a good man, Serafina. I have been a cold man, a logical man. I have run my life like a business. My father, he was the opposite. He was all passion, all emotion, and he nearly ruined us. I swore I would never be him." He touched her cheek. "I built my fortress of logic to keep the world out. But I kept life out too. You did not just save yourself, you saved me. From a grey, empty existence. I do not care what they say. I do not care if the entire ton cuts us. I have you. That is the only variable that matters in my equation." This was the real-life part of their story. It wasn't a simple, happily ever after. It was a choice, a daily, deliberate choice to face the world together. Their wedding was a quiet affair, held at Hartwood Abbey, not in London. The guests were few: Mr. Davies, the old academics, a handful of tenants from the estate, and Mrs. Beckett, who actually cried. As Serafina walked down the aisle of Hartwood's small, ancient chapel, Alistair was waiting. The man who had, only weeks before, looked at her as an untenable position, now looked at her as if she were the center of his universe. That night, Hartwood Abbey was different. The fires were lit. The rooms were filled with flowers. Music played. The new Duchess of Radcliffe found her husband in the library, their library. He was by the window, but this time he was not staring out. He was watching her. "It is warmer," she said, looking around. "You are here," he replied simply. "That is why." He crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. "The debt is paid, Serafina Vane." "Is it?" she murmured against his chest. "No," he admitted, his voice rough. "I was wrong. It is only just beginning, and I will spend the rest of my life, forever, trying to repay it." The first year of their marriage was an education. Serafina, the Duchess of Radcliffe, learned how to run two great houses, how to manage a staff that had once terrified her, and how to navigate the complex web of aristocratic society. She did it with a quiet grace and a sharp mind that soon silenced the critics. She became her husband's partner, not just his wife. She sat in on his meetings with Mr. Davies, offering insights into the tenant farms that Alistair's logical mind overlooked. She reopened Hartwood, filling its austere halls with life, music, and, to Alistair's feigned annoyance, poetry. But it was Alistair who changed the most. The Iron Duke did not melt. Iron, after all, is strong. But he remolded. He learned to laugh. He learned that an impromptu walk in the rain was not an inefficient use of time, but a necessity. He learned that hope was not a dangerous indulgence, but the very fuel of life. He discovered to his astonishment that he was capable of jealousy. A young, handsome Viscount once spent 20 minutes complimenting Seraphina's wit at a dinner, and Alistair found himself consumed by a primitive, illogical rage that was both terrifying and exhilarating. He cut the man dead with 2 sentences and whisked his wife away, much to her private amusement. He also found he was capable of profound, breathtaking tenderness. 2 years after their wedding, Seraphina was in the library, curled on the same window seat where he had first found her. She was not, however, reading. She was pale, her hand on her swollen belly, her brow knit in discomfort. Alistair, who was supposed to be in London for a critical vote in the House of Lords, burst into the room, his boots muddy, his hair wild. "Alistair! What are you doing here? The vote!" "Damn the vote," he said, breathless, crossing to her in 3 strides. He knelt, his large, warm hands covering hers on her stomach. I had a feeling. I was halfway to London, and it was illogical. It made no sense. But I felt you needed me." She leaned her head against his. "I am just tired." "Then I will be tired with you," he said. He sat with her for hours, reading aloud, not from his philosophy books, but from her book of Wordsworth. His voice, once so cold, now the only sound she ever wanted to hear. That night, their son, Arthur, was born. Alistair Vane, the Duke of Radcliffe, held the tiny, red-faced infant in his arms, his logical mind completely, utterly, and finally shattered. He looked at his wife, exhausted but radiant, and felt a rush of emotion so powerful it brought him to his knees. He had promised her 1 month of protection, a finite contractual obligation. He had, in return, been given this: a future, a family, a life he never knew he was capable of having. He looked at Seraphina, the woman who had breached his fortress, and he finally understood. She smiled at him, her eyes heavy with sleep. "What is it, my love?" He couldn't speak. He simply shook his head, kissing her hand, then his son's brow. He knew, with the kind of certainty that transcended all logic, all reason, that the title of their story was wrong. It wasn't that forever wasn't long enough. It was that forever had only just begun. And so, the Iron Duke and the woman who saved him found their own kind of real-life story. It wasn't a fairy tale, but something better. It was real. They learned that true protection isn't about walls and fortresses. It's about opening a door and letting someone in. They proved that even the most logical, guarded heart can be rewritten by a love that is chaotic, illogical, and absolutely necessary. The Duke promised her 1 month, but he gave her his entire life, and in return, she gave him his. If you were touched by Alistair and Seraphina's journey, please let us know. These stories are for you, and your support means the world to us. Take a second to hit that like button and share this story with someone else who loves a tale of romance and redemption. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and turn on all notifications. We have so many more stories to share with you, and you won't want to miss a single one. Thank you for listening.